The sky burned bright red as a mysterious object crashed into the outer edges of the refugee zone. A loud boom echoed for miles. People rushed out of their tents and shelters, trying to see what had fallen. Dust filled the air. The ground trembled. At first, they thought it was a meteor, but it wasn't. From the smoke and fire, a strange shape began to rise, a half-destroyed pod, glowing with broken blue lights and covered in alien symbols. The metal was twisted. Sparks flew from its body. Something had fallen from the stars. People gathered, but no one dared to get too close. Some whispered, "Is it dangerous?" Others grabbed their children and walked away. Fear filled their eyes. No one wanted trouble. No one wanted to help. And then, they saw her. She was crawling out of the wreck, slowly, painfully. Her body was thin and shaking. Her skin was pale blue, and her silver eyes glowed faintly, full of fear and confusion. Her arms dragged her broken body across the sand. From the waist down, she had nothing, no legs. Only scars and metal stumps, as if something had torn her apart and left her to die. She looked around at the people watching her. Dozens of humans stared, but none stepped forward. She reached out a hand, her fingers trembling. "Please," she whispered. No one moved. Some turned away. Others whispered, "She's not one of us." She coughed hard and collapsed into the sand. And that's when Arik saw her. He was just a young mechanic who worked in the back area of the camp, fixing water pumps and damaged solar panels. He had been walking back from a repair job when he saw the crowd, then the alien girl on the ground. He didn't feel fear. He felt something else, pity, anger, and a strange pull in his chest. Without a second thought, he pushed through the people, knelt beside her, and gently picked her up. She was light, like a bird. Her skin was cold. Her breathing was weak. She didn't resist. She was too tired to fight. "Help me," Arik said, looking at the crowd. "She's hurt." But no one came forward. "She's not our problem," someone muttered. "She's not human." Arik gritted his teeth. "She's alive. That's enough." He carried her all the way to his workshop, a small metal shack at the edge of the camp. He laid her gently on an old mattress and covered her with a thermal blanket. She shivered, but didn't speak. Her eyes followed him as he moved around the room. Arik had no medical training, but he cleaned her wounds and gave her clean water. He tried talking to her, but she didn't answer. Still, she watched him carefully, as if trying to understand his every word. "You're safe here," he said softly. "I don't know what you are, but I won't let you die." That night, Arik stayed awake, watching over her. She didn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, her lips sometimes moving, as if whispering to someone far away. At one point, her wrist began to glow faintly. A red light blinked from under her skin, hidden beneath metal plating. Arik leaned closer. "What's that?" The light blinked faster. Suddenly, her body jerked. She groaned in pain. Her eyes rolled back, and strange symbols lit up across her neck and shoulder. She was overheating. Panicked, Arik grabbed a coolant spray and applied it to her skin. The glow faded. She calmed down the next morning. She spoke for the first time. One word. Quiet, broken name. Arik's eyes lit up. He smiled. "You want to know my name?" She nodded weakly. "I'm Arik." She pointed to herself, then tilted her head. He thought for a second. "I don't know your name, but I can give you one." He looked at her glowing silver eyes. "Vera? How about Vera?" She blinked slowly, then nodded once. "Vera," she whispered. And just like that, a bond was formed. Not between two species, but between two souls who had nothing else, but unknown to both of them. The blinking red light from Vera's body was more than just a health warning. It was a signal. Someone or something had received it. And they were on their way. Not to help her, not to save her, but to claim her. The sun rose slowly over the dusty refugee zone, casting long shadows over the broken tents and rusted machines. In the far corner of the camp, inside a small shack made of scrap metal and hope, Eric sat beside the strange alien girl he had saved. Her name was Vera, a name he had given her the night before. She had accepted it, and with that small nod, something had changed inside both of them. Vera was awake now. Her silver eyes followed Arik as he moved around the room. She didn't speak much, but she was alert, aware. She noticed every sound, every movement. Arik offered her food soft, warm soup, but she only took a few sips. Her body was still, weak, and her wounds were deep. She had no legs, only smooth metallic stumps that looked fused to her skin. Whoever had made her like this hadn't just removed her legs, they had replaced them with cold, artificial ends. "Who did this to you?" Arik asked quietly. Vera didn't answer. Instead, she pointed to the glowing light under her wrist. The same red, blinking light that had nearly overheated her body the night before. Eric examined it closely. It wasn't just a light, was a device, half organic, half machine, something far beyond human tech. He reached for his old scanner and held it over her arm. The screen blinked, then showed strange symbols, not part of any known language. "She's not just a visitor," Arik muttered. "She's built." Later that day, Arik tried to help her sit up, using a hover support frame he built from leftover drone parts. Vera seemed nervous at first, but allowed him to place the straps gently under her arms. When he activated the device, it lifted her softly into the air. She was surprised, but not afraid. For the first time since her crash, she floated upright. Her eyes met his. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft and broken. "You're welcome," Arik smiled. "You deserve better than the ground." Vera looked around the workshop, her gaze resting on an old toolbox. Slowly, she floated toward it. Her hand hovered over the tools, and then, to Eric's shock, she picked up a piece of metal and started reshaping it with her fingers. The metal bent like clay under her touch. Within minutes, she had created a small sculpturous star surrounded by 3 rings. Eric stared. "What is that?" She pointed to the star, then to her chest. "Home. You're trying to go back?" She shook her head. "No home now." Something about the way she said it broke Eric's heart. She wasn't just a visitor from another planet. She was a refugee. Like everyone else here, lost, alone, forgotten, and yet she didn't ask for pity. She only asked for safety. That night, as Vera rested in her hover cradle, Eric sat outside under the stars. He thought about everything he had seen, the crash, the symbols, the technology, and that signal. The blinking red light hadn't stopped. Whatever it was still sending. Suddenly, the scanner inside his shack beeped loudly. He rushed in and looked at the screen. A message had appeared, written in alien code but partially translated by the scanner's AI. "Signal received. Retrieval unit en route." Eric's heart dropped. Someone was coming. He turned to Vera, who was now sitting up, alert. She had seen the message too. Her face was pale. "Who are they?" he asked. She whispered, "Hunters." Arik locked the door and lowered the blackout shield over the windows. The camp outside was quiet, but danger was now a ticking clock. He sat beside her. "You said there's no home now, but you also said someone is coming. Are they from your world?" She nodded. "Not my people. They take things, living things." Arik was beginning to understand. Vera wasn't just any alien girl. She was something created, something important. And someone or something wanted her back. Why did they make you like this? He asked. Vera closed her eyes. To hold knowledge. I carry things ... they want. What kind of things? She looked at him, her voice flat. A weapon. Eric stood up. So, they're not rescuing you. They're trying to finish what they started. She nodded slowly. I escaped. Now, they erase. Eric's mind raced. He was just a mechanic. He didn't know how to fight off alien hunters or protect a living weapon from a galactic empire. But looking at her so broken, so calm, he knew one thing. He couldn't let them take her. Then we need to leave, he said. Before they get here, Vera looked uncertain. Nowhere safe. We'll make it safe, Eric said, more confident than he felt. I'll find a way. I won't leave you behind. Vera stared at him, eyes soft. Why help me? Eric didn't answer right away. He just smiled sadly. Because no one helped me when I was alone. And you deserve better than that. Outside, the stars flickered. A faint hum vibrated in the sky just out of hearing range. Something had entered Earth's orbit, and it was coming fast. The air felt heavier that morning. The wind carried a strange pressure, like something was watching from above. Eric felt it in his chest. So did Vera. She hadn't said a word since the warning signal appeared the night before. Her eyes stared out the small, dusty window of the shack, scanning the sky like a hunted animal waiting for the next shot. Eric packed their few supplies, water canisters, basic tools, a worn-out map, and his homemade pulse scanner. He looked at Vera, still strapped to the hover support frame. Her wounds had begun to heal slowly, but she remained fragile. Her skin, a soft bluish tone, had started showing veins of faint silver light. Something inside her was changing. We have to leave today, Eric said, tightening his tool belt. I know a way through the tunnels under the east sector. It's abandoned, but it'll keep us hidden. Vera finally looked at him and nodded before leaving. Eric shut down all powered equipment inside the workshop and wiped all traces of Vera's presence. They couldn't leave anything behind, not even the metal sculpture she made of her home system. It might mean nothing to someone else, but to the people chasing her, it could be everything. As they moved through the eastern edge of the camp, Eric noticed patrol drones in the sky to advance to be human. Sleek, black, and silent. They hovered in wide circles, scanning with beams of red light. Vera saw them and froze. Eric whispered, "They're not military." "Are they from your world?" She answered quietly. "No. Worse, they serve the ones who take." Eric guided her through a back alley, leading into a rusted maintenance tunnel that hadn't been used in years. As the metal doors closed behind them, the sounds of the outside world faded. In the silence of the tunnels, Vera began to speak more freely. Her voice was slow, but steadier than before. "They made me to store memory. Ancient things, lost codes, forbidden tech. Why you?" Eric asked, his voice echoing off the steel walls. "I don't know," she said, her silver eyes dim. "Maybe because I couldn't say no. I was created, not chosen." Eric's grip on the hover chair tightened. "So they built you to be a living container, a machine with a face. I thought I was a person," she whispered, "but then I remembered. Pieces. I saw them take others like me. Some screamed. Some went silent forever." Eric wanted to ask more, but the tunnel began to rumble slightly. Dust fell from above. The ground shook once, then again. He pulled out his scanner. A moving object, large, less than 2 kilometers away. "Underground. They're tracking us," he said, backing away from the scanner's red display. "They're already inside the tunnels." Suddenly, Vera winced in pain. Her body glowed faintly again, and strange symbols lit up on her arms. Eric watched in shock as those symbols projected holographic images into the air. Blueprints, star, maps, equations far beyond human understanding. "What is that?" he asked. She stared at the floating shapes. "My memory, it's unlocking. They tried to erase it, but you? Being near you? It's waking something." Then she pointed to one of the symbols, a jagged star wrapped in a circle. "That is what they want. It's called the Black Seal. It hides the final key to a weapon lost long ago." Eric blinked. "A weapon? On Earth?" "No," she corrected. "Beneath Earth." Eric sat back against the wall. Why would someone hide something that dangerous here? Vera looked him in the eyes. Because humans have the one thing most species forgot. What? Hope. Before Eric could respond, a metallic scream tore through the tunnel. Something was moving fast, scraping against walls, grinding through steel like it was nothing. Eric jumped up. "We have to go." They raced through the tunnel until they reached an old railway platform. It was dark, dusty, but it gave them space to move. Eric checked the map on the wall. There was an exit to the surface, less than 400 meters away. But before they could move, something dropped from the ceiling. It was tall, armored in black plates, with red eyes that flickered like fire. Its arms were too long. Its face had no mouth. Only a mask. Vera gasped. Shadow drone. The creature stepped forward, silent but deadly. It raised one hand. A weapon unfolded from its wrist thin, glowing, and aimed at Eric. Eric held up his hands. "Don't move," he whispered to Vera. "Let me distract it." But Vera's eyes began to glow. No more hiding. Before Eric could stop her, she lifted her hand and released a burst of energy. A shockwave of pure white light blasted the drone across the tunnel. It slammed into a wall, sparking and twitching. Dodek stared in disbelief. "What was that?" Vera looked at her hand, glowing with the same light. "A memory of who I was before they made me forget." Eric pulled her back onto the hover chair. "Let's go before more of them arrive." As they ran toward the exit, Vera whispered one more truth. "I wasn't just built to carry memories. I was built to awaken something sleeping beneath this world." And above them, beyond the clouds, more shadows moved in orbit, waiting for their moment. The world above seemed calm, but Eric knew better. As he and Vera emerged from the old maintenance tunnel into a forest clearing, he could feel its pressure in the air, the invisible weight pressing down. Something had changed. The hunters weren't just searching anymore. They were closing in. The trees around them were tall and thin, their branches swaying in the wind like they were whispering warnings. A narrow path led through the forest, but Eric didn't trust it. He kept Vera close, guiding her hover chair over the rough terrain, listening for every sound. Vera had not spoken much since the tunnel battle. She was weak again, the glow in her eyes dimming. But there was something different about her now, a presence. As if her power was no longer buried inside, hurt was beginning to surface. "They're watching," she said quietly. Eric stopped. "From where?" She raised her hand and pointed upward toward the clouds dot above the treetops. Something dark and silent hovered in the sky. A long black shape, sharp like a blade, moved slowly above the forest. No engine noise. No visible lights, just a floating shadow, too perfect, too still. It wasn't just scanning, was waiting. "That's not human," Eric muttered. "No," Vera said. "It's them." The void had arrived. "They will drop soldiers soon," Vera explained. "Silent ones. They don't speak, they don't feel. They only take." Eric knew they had little time. He pulled out the small scanner he had salvaged from his workshop. It was blinking rapidly now. Red dots were spreading across the map. 10 signatures, he said, frowning. "Maybe more." We can't fight them, she said, her voice trembling. Not yet. Then we keep moving. They followed an old dirt trail that twisted through the forest and led into the mountains. It was an old supply route, long abandoned after the war. The deeper they went, the quieter it became. No birds, no insects, no wind. Why aren't they attacking? Arik asked, uneasy. They don't want to destroy me, Vera said. They want to capture me, alive. Why? Because I'm the last living access key to what they're trying to wake. The weapon? She shook her head. Worse, the mind that controls it. Before Arik could ask more, a loud sound cut through the silence, a high-pitched ringing, like metal screaming, in pain. Then, without warning, 3 black figures dropped from the sky, landing with soft thuds around them. The hunters had arrived. They were tall, slender, and wrapped in armor that absorbed light. Their faces were featureless, except for glowing red circles where eyes should be. They moved with terrifying calm, circling Arik and Vera slowly, like wolves surrounding prey. Arik stepped in front of her, holding the only weapon he had, a modified energy cutter. It wouldn't do much, but it was better than nothing. Stay back, he shouted. The hunters didn't stop. Then, to Arik's shock, Vera floated forward. Her hands were glowing again. Her voice had changed. Stronger now, steady. I remember who I am, she said. She raised her hands, and light burst from her body in a wave. The nearest hunter was thrown back into a tree, its armor cracking. Another tried to dodge, but was caught by the edge of the blast. It collapsed into dust. But the third was faster. It leaped through the air, landing behind them. Arik turned too late. The hunter grabbed him by the neck, lifting him off the ground. Arik. Vera screamed. The hunter's grip tightened. Suddenly, the red lights on its face began to flicker. The hunter dropped Arik and stepped back, shaking. Vera stood with both hands glowing bright white. Her voice echoed unnaturally. You do not control me anymore. The hunter fell to its knees, then collapsed, its armor breaking into fragments. Arik coughed and sat up. What, did you just do? Vera lowered her hands slowly. They programmed me to obey. I just broke the command. She helped him up. As long as I run, they chase. But if I stop running and fight, they break. Arik looked at her. This was not the same helpless girl he had carried from the wreckage. This was someone else, someone becoming more. We can't keep hiding. She said, we have to reach the beacon. What's the beacon? A place built by the ones who made me, before the void turned on them. It can unlock the truth or destroy it. Where is it? She pointed toward the distant mountains. 2 days from here, if we survive that long. As they began walking again, the sky above them rumbled. More ships were coming, but Vera didn't stop this time. For the first time, she wasn't just surviving, she was preparing to fight. The mountains stood tall in the distance, cold and silent, like ancient giants waiting for something. Arik looked up at the snow-covered peaks and felt a shiver, not from the wind, but from the unknown. Somewhere deep inside those mountains was the place Vera had called the beacon, a hidden location built long before human history. A place meant to protect or destroy something powerful. Arik and Vera moved quietly along a narrow trail at the edge of the valley. The air was thinner here. Their breaths came out as clouds, and frost covered the trees. Vera's hoverchair hummed softly, barely loud enough to hear. She had been quiet for hours, eyes focused as if her thoughts were far away. Are you okay? Arik asked, watching her carefully. I feel heavier, she said. The closer we get, the more I remember about the beacon. She nodded slowly, and about what I'm carrying. They continued walking until the trail ended at a massive steel gate, covered in rust and ice. It looked like it hadn't been touched in centuries. Arik pushed against it, and with a loud groan, the door opened into a wide tunnel carved in two. The mountain itself. The walls were smooth, not built by humans, too perfect, too old as they entered. Lights flickered on by themselves, one after another, lighting the path in soft blue. "They still work," Arik whispered. "They were waiting." "For me," Vera replied. Inside, the air was warmer. Strange symbols glowed on the walls, Xalian text, and circular maps filled with stars and paths through galaxies. Arik tried to read them, but they made no sense to him. Vera touched the walls gently with her fingers, and wherever she made contact, the symbols shifted, revealing images. He saw flashes of her past. A white city in space, filled with tall beings who looked like her silver eyes, glowing skin, long limbs. He saw machines, flying ships, energy flowing through structures that reached beyond the clouds. Then he saw war, explosions, screams. The white city burned, and the sky turned black. Vera pulled her hand away. The wall went dark. "They were like me," she said softly. But they chose to become something else. They became the void. They walked deeper into the tunnel until they reached a large chamber, round and wide like a dome. In the center stood a platform surrounded by floating crystals. Above it hovered a single cube, spinning slowly, glowing white. "That's the beacon," she said. Arik stepped forward. "What does it do?" "It wakes the core." He turned to her. "The core. You mean the weapon?" She hesitated. "More than a weapon. It's knowledge, energy, life itself. If used right, it could power worlds. But if it falls into the wrong hands, it could destroy them." Vera nodded before Arik could ask more. His scanner beeped. Something was coming. He checked the screen. "A ship, big, fast." "They found us," he said. Vera moved to the platform and placed her hand on a metal pillar beside it. The crystals floated toward her, spinning faster. Lines of energy rose from the floor, circling her body. Her eyes began to glow again, brighter than before. Arik stepped back, shielding his eyes. "What's happening?" "I'm syncing with the beacon," she said. "It must recognize me fully." Outside the chamber, a loud boom shook the mountain. Dust fell from the ceiling. Arik ran to the entrance and looked out. The black ship had landed at the mountain base. Soldiers in dark armor were climbing the slope, weapons ready. They moved. In perfect silence. "We don't have time," he shouted. "I need one more minute." She said. The floor beneath her lit up with symbols. A voice, ancient and deep, echoed from the walls. "Key recognized. Final protocol unlocked." But then, the lights flickered. Vera screamed and fell to her knees. Her body glowed so brightly that cracks of light burst from her skin. Arik rushed to her side. "What's wrong?" "They're trying to shut me down." From inside, she gasped. "A fail-safe. They never wanted me to finish this." Her body shook violently. The crystals dimmed. The cube stopped spinning. "No," she whispered. "Not yet." Arik grabbed her hands. "Fight it. You're stronger now. You said you broke their control." She looked at him. "I did, but I didn't break all of it." Arik closed his eyes and focused. "Then I'll break it with you." He held her tighter, and the energy around them pulsed. Suddenly, the cube above the platform glowed white again. The crystals returned. The platform, HUMMED.VIRA, stood up, light pouring from her eyes. "It's done. The beacon is awake." Outside, the soldiers had reached the gate. Arik and Vera turned to face the door as it began to open with a loud hiss. Vera whispered, Now comes the final choice. The steel doors of the chamber groaned open, and the cold air of the mountain poured in like a warning. Shadows moved in the hallway beyond tall, armored figures with red eyes and smooth black helmets. The void had arrived. Eric stood in front of Vera, weapon raised, knowing it wouldn't be enough. He was just one man. They were many, and they were built for war. But he didn't move. He wouldn't let them take her. Not now. Not after everything they'd been through. Behind him, Vera stood on the glowing platform, surrounded by floating crystals and ancient lights. The beacon had accepted her. The knowledge she carried once locked deep inside was now awake, alive, flowing through her veins like fire. One of the hunters stepped forward, speaking in a cold, digital voice. Return. The key. Final warning. Vera's voice echoed across the chamber, stronger than ever. No. She raised one hand, and a pulse of energy blasted through the air. The first two hunters were thrown against the walls. Their armor cracked. Sparks flew. But more poured. Into the room, unfazed, Eric fired his weapon, covering Vera as she stepped down from the platform. Light flowed from her body with every step. The void forces circled them, but didn't attack directly. They were waiting for something. Then he arrived. A taller figure entered through the door. His armor darker than space, his eyes brighter than fire. The High One. He didn't speak at first. He simply looked at Vera as if measuring her strength. Child of light, he said at last, voice deep and heavy. You were made to obey. Return to us, and you will be spared. Vera stared at him, unafraid. You erased my home. You erased my body. But you didn't erase my will. You were not meant to have one. Then you failed. Eric felt the ground tremble. The core, the true power source buried under the mountain, was reacting. He looked toward the center of the platform where a glowing crack had appeared. A sphere of energy pulsed beneath the floor. Vera turned to him. That's the core. It's waking up. What happens if they take it? They will control the minds of millions. They'll rewrite planets and free thought. Silence every voice that says no. Eric's heart pounded. Then we can't let them near it. The High One raised a hand. The other void soldiers stepped forward. Vera stepped between them and the core. You want the code? She said. Then take it from me. She pressed both hands to the floor. The platform lit up instantly. The energy shot upward in waves of light. The core responded, rising from its chamber like a glowing heart. Symbols danced in the air around it. The void soldiers rushed forward, but it was too late. The beacon began transmitting. Not a weapon. Not a laser. A memory. Across the chamber, light touched the helmets of the void soldiers. One by one, they froze. They began to see what Vera had seen. The peaceful cities, the creators, the betrayal. The moment when knowledge was turned into control, and the scream of every soul that had once been like her, silent, used, forgotten. The soldiers trembled. Some dropped their weapons. One stepped back. The High One roared, No, stop the feed. But the truth could not be stopped. Vera's voice shook the room. You built me to forget, but I remember now. The High One lunged forward, energy blades forming in his hands. Eric fired, slowing him down, but he kept coming. Vera stood still. She looked at Eric one last time. I can end this, but I have to become the code. What does that mean? I was built to hold knowledge. Now I'll become it. No, Eric said, voice shaking. You'll vanish. She smiled softly. Not vanish. Transform. The core opened. A beam of white light pulled Vera in. Her body began to glow brighter than ever. The void soldiers fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the wave of memory. Even the High One stopped moving. His weapons dropped. He looked around. lost, trapped in a sea of forgotten pain, and then silence. The light exploded outward. The void soldiers dissolved into particles of dust and light. Their armor faded. Their minds freed. The High One collapsed into nothing, and the core shut down. Eric ran to the platform. Vera was gone. No body. No light. Just stillness. But around him, the air was warmer. The walls no longer glowed with warnings, but with peace. The beacon pulsed softly like a heartbeat. He dropped to his knees. She was gone, but she had saved them all. Suddenly, a crystal floated down from the ceiling and landed in his hand. Inside it, her voice spoke. I chose this. For them, for you. Remember me, not as a weapon, but as someone who chose to be free. The mountain was silent. No more energy waves. No more enemies. No more voices crying out in pain. The core had dimmed to a soft blue glow, resting quietly in the chamber where Vera had once stood. The air was warm now, no longer tense or heavy. The room, once filled with machines, shadows, and threats, now felt like a sanctuary. Like the end of something terrible and the beginning of something new. Eric sat on the edge of the platform, still holding the glowing crystal in his hand. Inside it, Vera's final message echoed softly. Her voice was calm, filled with peace. She had chosen her path, chosen to give up her body, her freedom, even her identity, to protect a world that had once ignored her. And now, she was gone. But the memory of her was not. Outside, the wind had changed. The sky over the mountains was clear and bright. The black ships of the void had vanished, erased, like a bad dream fading with the morning light. The soldiers who had once followed blindly were now free, scattered across the stars with minds restored and orders forgotten. Eric looked at the entrance of the beacon, half expecting Vera to appear, smiling, floating back on her hover chair. But no one came, and yet he didn't feel alone. Days passed, then weeks. Eric stayed at the beacon, tending to it, protecting it. He knew the governments would come eventually, curious about the energy surge and the sudden disappearance of the enemy ships. But he didn't care about politics or rewards. He cared about keeping her story alive. He built a small shelter near the mouth of the beacon, surrounded by the strange crystals that still floated in the air. He studied them, learned from them. Each crystal carried a small piece of knowledge, some about the stars, others about Vera's people. But one crystal remained with him always, the one with her voice inside. Each night, held it to his chest and listened. I was never just a machine, never just a memory. You made me more. You made me feel real. One evening, as the sun sank behind the peaks and painted the sky in soft orange, something happened. A flower bloomed at the center of the beacon chamber. It was blue, small, glowing, softly unlike any plant found on Earth. Eric knelt beside it, his heart beating fast. Vera had once said her world had flowers like that. She had described them in a soft whisper, saying they only bloomed when the stars aligned. When the universe was at peace, he smiled through his tears. You're still here. And he was right. Vera had not vanished, not truly. She had become part of the core, part of the energy flowing through the beacon, and maybe through Earth itself. Her sacrifice had not just destroyed the enemy, had planted a seed. Hope Dodderk decided to leave the mountain. He returned to the refugee zone, as the mechanic he once was, but as a witness to something bigger. He told her story to anyone who would listen. The girl who fell from the stars, the one everyone ignored, the one who had no legs, no voice, no name, until one human gave her all three. People began to remember her. They painted her image on the walls of cities, silver eyes, gentle hands, a star-shaped flower in her hair. The story spread across borders, languages, even planets. And wherever it was told, things began to change. People started noticing the quiet ones, the broken ones, the ones who sat in corners and watched the world pass by. They began to understand that value wasn't found in power or noise, but in kindness, sacrifice, and courage. Years later, a monument was built in the place where her ship first crashed. A sculpture of her hovering just above the ground. Eyes looking upward stood, surrounded by flowers that glowed at night, and on the base of the statue, one sentence was carved in a dozen languages. She was not made to choose, but she chose. Anyway, Eric never stopped visiting the beacon. Even as he grew old, he made the journey every year. And every year, more flowers grew. The chamber never faded. The energy never dimmed, and sometimes, on the quietest nights, the wind would carry a voice not in words, but in feeling. Warm, calm, alive, it was her. Not a weapon, not a machine. Not a thing to be hunted or feared, but a soul. A girl. A symbol. The one who was forgotten by all, except one brave human.